Good morning, everyone. Vadim is here, please. Okay, I will start the presentation from Vadim. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Astrid Casalbum, and I am a member of Latin American Observatory of Energy Geopolitics, and we are presenting the fifth Energy Geopolitics Colloquium. The name is Challenges of Energy Transitions for BRICS and Latin American Countries. And today I have a pleasure of introducing the session on Geopolitics of Critical Minerals in the BRICS with Vadim Kuznetsov from Russia. And he's here. I introduce Vadim now. He's Director for Sustainability and Climate Initiatives at BRICS Youth Energy Agency and project led at the Resource Managed Young Member Group of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, Expert Group on Resource Management. His professional background includes supporting BRICS energy consultations at United Nations Framework Conventions on Climate Change, COP26, and multilateral negotiations on the impact of the implementation of response measures at COP27. He was a G20 Youth Delegate for Sustainable and Livable Planet under Indonesia's G20 presidency. He coordinates BRICS Youth Energy Cooperation with United Nations Regional Economic Commissions and leads policy research on critical minerals in the energy transition. Vadim is a 2022 alumnus of the Oxford School of Climate Change and 2021 alumnus of the Rejuvenating Politics program by the Council European. Vadim, thank you for being here with us. I'm sorry for people who were waiting. We have technical problems, but we are here. You could present, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Astrid. Bom dia a todos e a todos. Prazer imenso ser aqui com vocês, mas eu vou falar no inglês, because it's easier to convey the very difficult topic which we are discussing today. But this topic is very important, which oftentimes is left outside the negotiation rooms. It's often not on the agenda of major international gatherings, such as COP27 last year, and I'm sure COP28 this year. But this topic is nevertheless central to the energy transition globally. And of course, the BRICS countries have a big role to play in making this transition happen. I'm talking about critical minerals. Those metals which we as humanity need to advance our clean energy transition, to manufacture almost all our clean energy equipment. So the first very basic thing we need to understand about our energy transition is that it is impossible for us to make it happen if we do not extract minerals. So now I would like to take you through quite a detailed explanation of what the challenge of critical minerals is and how we as researchers, as policymakers, as young people across the BRICS countries can work with this, can address this challenge, can work with this important theme to finally ensure that our energy transition is not only green for the end user, but also sustainable across the whole value chain. So if you don't mind, I will share just a few slides to exemplify what I mean when I say it is our key and central challenge in terms of energy transition. So I now press share screen. If anybody can tell me if my screen is visible, can you make me understand that? Astrid, é visível o slide? Okay, I hope it's visible. So I would like to start by saying that now there is quite a big shift in terms of policymakers' attention to the clean energy transition and the role critical minerals play in this transition. The International Energy Agency is one of the sources that I used to prepare this presentation, and according to their data, and they are collecting data across all the global north countries, so it's quite representative, is that we are now witnessing a very sharp increase in demand for critical minerals. Actually, this drive is happening due to our rapid deployment of clean energy technologies. So let us first agree on our vocabulary. When we say the world is moving rapidly towards renewable energy, we mean first and foremost solar power and wind power, and the third element of the so-called clean energy technologies for us in this presentation would be electric batteries. So batteries which we use to power our electric vehicle, energy, so different types of batteries which we employ to decarbonize our systems. So all those technologies together push for a higher demand in critical minerals worldwide. You may now see on the screen that over the past 5 years, the estimations show that we have reached over 300 billion US dollars in market share, market value. And quite soon we might see a situation when our market volume for critical minerals will exceed that of iron ore mining, which is one of the traditional, conventional mining fields. And then let's take a closer look at what at which clean technologies are driving this market uptake. So we have solar PV installations, which are indeed on the rise across the globe, but also wind power, which is a less popular source of power just because it requires more preparation work and is more costly for deployment, but still, it's also...
Vadim, sorry,
Yeah,
could you share the full screen, please? Because we are not looking the share screen, the full screen. Sorry.
Yeah, but I am sharing full screen. It's not visible.
Not yet.
I am sharing full screen.
Okay, no problem.
I may do like that, right? Because I was sharing the whole screen all time, but
click.
I hope it's visible here.
F11.
So, yeah.
Okay, no problem. We are, it's possible to see.
Okay, fine. Well, yeah, I think I should not be sharing screen because it will be not visible again. So, yeah, so I was saying that we have solar PV and wind power and also electric, and also batteries as the key drivers for the uptake of critical minerals in terms of demand. And as you may notice here, along the 5 recent years, the demand for energy was the main driver for critical minerals supply orders. So, for instance, we had a 70% jump in lithium demand. So we almost tripled that for lithium, and 70% was the jump for cobalt, 40% rise in demand for nickel. And we have many more minerals involved in this transition. It's just that the International Energy Agency is considering the most popular ones, so to say. And you see that the numbers 5 years ago were much smaller, which means that the demand is rising very fast. The key question for us here would be to actually measure whether our supply is adequately fit to feed the industry globally. Just a couple of infographics here. You may see that if we are consistent with our climate pledges, which almost all countries in the world have, because they are part of the United Nations parties, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and are also parties to the Paris Agreement. See that if we are truly serious about achieving net zero by different years, because as you may know, for different countries, the date, the year when they should go climate neutral varies quite significantly from 2050 to 2070. It will take us a lot of effort to get there from the point of view of sourcing and manufacturing things with the use of critical minerals. So on the left, you can see that total demand for lithium in the net zero scenario will grow from a very small portion in 2021 to a significant portion in 2050 over the next 30 years. And the uptake is more than skyrocketing, because we have the current demand primarily focused on so-called other low-emission power generation, and also some other low-carbon technologies currently being in process of manufacture and marketization. And then in 2050, we will have most of our demand focused on electric vehicles, and then grid storage batteries, and finally other appliances we need. Electric mobility is the key driver for the uptake of lithium over the next 30 years. And this uptake is set to grow even more if we are really serious about making the global population switch from conventional fossil fuel-based vehicles to the electric ones. The same goes for global demand for other selected minerals, as shown in the chart on the right. So the estimations for copper, for nickel, and for cobalt show the sharpest growth is going to take place with cobalt, because cobalt is a mineral which we use to manufacture the same battery appliances that I mentioned. Something more interesting about copper and nickel is that they are used across a variety of technologies, not necessarily those we need for the energy transition, such as our space industry, such as artificial intelligence and high-tech products. But the scenario here considers the uptake we will require only in the field of energy technologies. So overall, what we can learn from looking at those graphs is that we as consumers will need a lot more mining to make sure that we meet the demand driven by our transition towards cleaner and more climate neutral technologies, energy systems, cities, transportation, vehicles, and many other things. And again, what I would emphasize here with a lot of attention to our global interconnected market system is that the current demand is already high. So we have very few producers, and now we'll show it a bit later. We have very few producers of critical minerals, but the demand for those minerals is global in nature because you have more and more countries embarking on this clean energy transition pathway. Also, something that I would emphasize now is that very often when you attend big conferences and big meetings of global nature, such as upcoming COP28 on climate, you will hear that we need to accelerate the energy transition. What does that truly mean in terms of our critical mineral supply? It means that this supply will have to meet a larger demand, but we need to make sure before we go there that we do not leave anyone behind. So if we have just some end users in wealthy industrialized countries benefiting from sourcing and receiving critical minerals for their industries, it simply means we will not have a large portion of other economies in the global south benefiting from the availability of such materials to help them transition towards more climate neutral technologies. Now let's look at some definitions, because I was constantly saying critical minerals, what does that even mean? I took some of the most prominent regulatory examples, that of the EU and that of the US, to exemplify how those economies frame the necessity of making policies, developing policies for their energy transition. So critical minerals per se is not a geophysical term. In nature, in the environment, you would never find a critical mineral because minerals, they just exist. You cannot call them critical, important, or not important. They are just nature-made. So it is not a geological, geophysical term. But what is interesting about critical minerals is that this is a purely political designation that was coined by policymakers in certain jurisdictions to describe the importance of such minerals for their own economies, for their own industries. As you may see, the European Union qualifies minerals as critical if they are essential to the economy and their supply may be disrupted. The United States also has a clear definition for critical minerals. It is a non-fuel mineral or mineral material essential to the economic or national security of the US, and which has a supply chain vulnerable to disruption. So when reading those definitions, we can clearly see that one of the key items which describes mineral as a critical one is their utmost importance for national economy, and there is also this direct link, direct connection with supply disruption. So major economies, major consumers of critical minerals, such as the EU and the US, are worried about the value chains that exist now, and they want to make sure they avoid any kind of disruption because they consider clean energy technologies as vital for their economies. Yeah, just for your general information, the United States Department of Energy produces its list of critical materials annually. And here you may see its 2023 edition, it features quite a comprehensive list of critical minerals that are used specifically to empower the energy transition. So it's quite vast, and it does not end up or limit itself only to cobalt or lithium or copper. You have a wider plethora of different minerals which are considered strategically important. And also to add up on why the United States and the EU perspectives are shown here, although our topic now is BRICS, because the EU and the US are amongst the main global consumers of critical minerals, and you know that both economies have very ambitious national plans to transit to low carbon future. That's why I decided to put it here, but we will definitely discuss the role of BRICS in this process a bit later. What is important to learn from this slide is that the political term critical minerals comes from the global north. It is a widely used concept in the EU and the US, which step by step has become a global definition. Now, moving on with our discussion, hopefully we'll still have some time to take questions and debate. I would like to show how the United States classifies the criticality of different minerals. You may see that it has different scenarios, including short-term and medium-term projections. And again, one of the key factors for identifying criticality of minerals is the supply risk. So yeah, it's important to know that one of the key things that underpin the national and also supranational policies in this regard is the supply chain and its reliability. If we look with more attention at what minerals are considered the most critical out of all, we may see that it's mostly about rare earth elements. So one more important notice that I would like to emphasize is that we have critical minerals, which is a political term, and it describes different types of metals we use to make the clean energy transition happen. Within critical minerals, you have just minerals and also rare earth elements, rare earth metals. In the red zone, in the short-term graph, you can see that most of them are indeed rare earth elements, such as dysprosium, neodymium, terbium, etc. And there are even more of them in the medium-term projection in the right graph. And it speaks quite explicitly about the need for major economies to think beforehand about their current and future sources of rare earth elements and other minerals which are highly in demand. Also, you may notice that uranium is quite high on the criticality spectrum. I think it's quite easy to say why, because nuclear energy is considered one of the most important energy sources of the future, and a big economy such as the United States consider it very important to secure sustainable, reliable supply chains of this mineral. Moving on. Yeah, I guess it's in quite poor quality, but I will just briefly mention why I put this thing on the slide. So as you noticed on the previous slide, rare earth elements are, according to the United States authority estimations, are expected to be one of the main critical minerals of the future. So who produces most of them today? Where are the world's rare earth reserves? We have China dominating this niche, this field of critical minerals, and its reserves are considered the most important in the world. And then we also have Brazil and Russia and India as one of the most important countries with most critical mineral reserves, specifically rare earth reserves, as exemplified here. So basically, if we talk about geopolitics of critical minerals in the BRICS, it is mostly BRICS countries which hold the reserves of those minerals that the world will need in medium term and in long term. So just for our future discussion, I hope that we just realize the immense potential of the BRICS countries in the clean energy transition. It basically says that we cannot transition any further if the BRICS countries are not engaged in sustainable value chains to make sure that our critical minerals we have and we produce are not delivered on the global market. Now let's analyze what are the top producing countries of critical minerals, not only rare earths. So if we look at the countries where mining takes place, because in this extraction phase of critical minerals life cycle, we have the mining part and processing part. So if we look at the mining part, we'll notice that it's quite diversified, although there are not that many countries. So if we look at top three for each type of critical minerals, we will have rare earths, almost all mined in China. We will have graphite, which is almost all mined again in China. We will have lithium, whose key mining actors are Australia and Chile. So the Latin America's participation in the clean energy transition and critical minerals value chains is quite important. I think we all know about the lithium triangle, which unites Argentina, Chile, and Bolivia. So this lithium aspect of Latin American geopolitics of critical minerals is highly relevant if we look at facts, if we look at the data. And then we have cobalt, where the Democratic Republic of the Congo, of course, dominates the global mining scene. For nickel, it's mostly Russia and Indonesia. And for copper, it's mostly Australia and Chile and also Peru. And then if we move further on across the life cycle of critical minerals, we have China processing most of them. So this concentration gets even tighter, even smaller. And one sec. Hello, am I back to the
Yes,
transmission?
no problem.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I had to change spots because of because of internet connection. Yeah, so
Mhm. No
I have
problem.
two final slides to share, so don't worry, it's not gonna take long. Yeah, so just as I was emphasizing at my last on this slide, is that it was this slide. So we have the mining geography, which is quite, well, I wouldn't say very diverse, but it's still quite representative of the global geography. We have Oceania, we have Latin America, we have Africa, we have Asia, we have North America. So it's more or less diverse. But if we look at the processing part of the extraction stage of life cycle, we may notice that China dominates almost all critical minerals, with the exception for nickel, where it is Indonesia, which is the key player. And just a quick overview for planned refining projects. Again, you may see that it's quite concentrated from the point of view of geography. We have China accounting for almost 50% for planned refining projects for lithium chemical, and we have planned refining projects for refined nickel, where Indonesia takes central stage. But we can also see that some South American countries like Argentina and Chile for lithium and Brazil for nickel are considered important actors and account for quite a significant share of planned projects. And a very quick information brief about one of the most important challenges which lies ahead of us. So we have learned that that our energy transition is highly resource intensive. Even though we are talking about clean and green transition, the way we source our materials for that, the way we process them is not always sustainable. But what is also relevant to say is that we have some resources running out of profitable outputs, which means that every time you mine, you need to invest more capex, you need to invest more capital, and you get less return on investment. This has pushed some industries, some companies to think about a new way for doing business. And they started looking at the option called deep sea mining. Deep sea mining is basically when you come and source your minerals from the ocean floor, from the seabed. And here on the slide, you may see some types of minerals which companies may source from the sea floor. It is polymetallic nodules. The most prominent minerals which polymetallic nodules contain are nickel and cobalt. Then they also have polymetallic sulfides, and you can source copper, zinc, but also gold and silver. And then you have cobalt-rich crust. And of course, the main thing there is cobalt. All of that together makes companies really want to start exploitation of the seafloor. However, what we cannot guarantee is environmental regulation. Why? Because, of course, deep sea mining is not a very novel thing. It's not a very new, never seen before thing. We have some countries already mining minerals underwater. But the difference is that they are doing it within their national jurisdiction, within their national sovereign waters. What is interesting about the current challenge is that we have the International Seabed Authority, which is a UN-mandated organization, based in Jamaica. And this organization is responsible for allocating exploitation permits to different countries whose companies may start doing that. Up until now, the International Seabed Authority has never authorized any commercial exploitation of the seafloor, only exploration. And currently, the discussion is unfolding pretty much interestingly, because the International Seabed Authority some years ago received the first submission, the first application to start commercial exploitation of the seafloor. And the challenge here is to make sure that there will be at least some environmental norms respected when countries when countries will start their deep sea mining activities in the area. And the area in the UN language means international no one's waters. So you see, the challenge here is to make sure that we do not start damaging the environment just to make sure that we do not emit more CO2. It would make no sense, because the marine life, the biodiversity of our oceans remains very much unknown, and we cannot calculate the negative effects that our deep sea mining activities might have on the marine environment. And also, a last addition here is that our oceans, our global ocean, is the main carbon sink in the world. So once we intervene and start exploiting something in the ocean, we can never be sure that we do not release huge and unprecedented amounts of CO2 into the atmosphere, just to source some minerals which we later will need to produce electric vehicles, wind turbines, and solar panels to reduce our CO2 emissions. So we need to think very carefully once we design our policies. And the final slide here is for our discussion. I hope we still have some little time. Some of the key issues which are highlighted by different scholars, by different organizations, by different researchers, once we talk about critical minerals. First is level of overconcentration in supply chains. You see, the main discourse in the world is not about sustainability. It's not about how sustainable our value chains are, how environmentally friendly deep sea mining is, how well-paid and well-trained people in global south countries are. I mean, those involved in mining, for example. This is not the key concern that countries have. The main thing countries worry about is the resilience and diversification of supply chains. And only then comes the second priority, which is lack of strong ESG standards. And by saying ESG, I mean both the environmental and the social dimension of critical minerals value chains. The key question here is whether our approach towards analyzing our SDG 7 and energy progress is correct, because as of now, we only measure our clean energy progress by the metrics of how well it has contributed to the end user's well-being. So we have an industrialized, well-developed, rich country which has installed yet another wind park, which has announced yet another solar panel farm. It means that this country, by current metrics, is progressing well because it is increasing its clean energy, renewable energy capacity. But if we analyze the entire value chain, starting from the very first part, which is critical minerals extraction and sourcing, we might not be that sure that the climate goals achieved by that end user was really worth the effort, because you may have entire forests, rivers, and marine environments polluted, destroyed, and simply sacrificed for the sake of somebody else's climate goals. That is why in my opinion, the lack of strong ESG standards should be considered more at international gatherings, such as the ones on climate, because it is intrinsically and directly linked to our climate policies. They dictate the way we source materials. It is our climate policies which are driving the uptake of critical minerals. And in fact, it is our climate policies which made some minerals critical. Then we have very little incentive for circularity. Now, some economies start realizing that circular solutions might help reduce the environmental pressure. But judging from experience, I've talked to many experts on the topic, it is still not economically viable to prioritize circular solutions, because if you can simply mine more, let's say, if you can go start deep sea mining, it will still cost you less than setting up a circular solution facility, such as recycling. And the second point here is that even if your industries want to start recycling, it is oftentimes not possible to recycle everything, right? You can recycle just some portion of your scrap, of your electric waste, of your battery, of your wind turbine. You cannot recycle everything, which is why we will still depend on mining for an unlimited number of years. And again, our production costs are on the rise because in some cases you have less resources available, but the world needs them. So it pushes the price up, and it makes our energy transition less accessible for the most vulnerable and the most disadvantaged communities. Then one more trend is new export restrictions on critical raw materials. We have more and more countries introducing export bans or enhanced export procedures to limit the outflow of critical minerals outside the country. We can cite the examples of Indonesia, China, Zimbabwe, and some other economies and countries which have already introduced some sort of export bans. And And yeah, I'm sorry for this network issues. I'm back, and I think I've covered pretty much everything I wanted to say. I will be glad to discuss this a little bit with you. Thank you.
Okay, Vadim, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and for sharing your knowledge and your. We are really grateful for your participation in our colloquium. And it's very interesting, and it's a particularly relevant topic for our region, like you said. Our region is the important producer of critical minerals. You mentioned Brazil, Chile, Bolivia, Argentina are really important in this context. We even, after your session, there will be a session about lithium. This transition certainly brings benefits and also challenges. And we have some questions to you for you too. Could I start from the public?
Sure.
Okay. From Eloisa Fernandez, she said, "Can we expect a worsening of the geopolitical conflicts that are unfolding in countries with this reserve? If yes, in what way?"
Yeah. Bom dia, Luisa Fernandes. Thank you for the. Muito obrigado pela pergunta. I think that we can definitely expect some sort of geopolitical tension associated with critical minerals. That's why they are called critical, because most economies need them so much that they cannot go on developing their industries without them. My hope is that, well, it's not only my hope, I just believe this will not lie in the military dimension, because it's not the way such a thing might be sorted out. Some instruments, some tools which are already being suggested by, for instance, the same International Energy Agency, is that countries need to create stockpiling reserves, which could be shared in case a certain mineral becomes non-available or unavailable on the global market. So in terms of tension, this might not really sound like a tension situation, but of course, when you create your stockpiling reserves, it means that you increase your own material independence if you're part of that group of countries that do so. And if you have your own reserves, it means that after a certain period of time, you will run out of this thing because your reserves is not limitless. And then starts the interesting point. So once it's over, do you manage to source new minerals that you need? Or if you don't, how do you make sure that your industries keep running? I think the key tool that we currently observe is trade policies. You see, it's not about military conflicts. It's mostly about trade wars and trade restrictions. You have more and more countries imposing new regulations on critical minerals, and there are many reasons for that, mostly economic ones, but also geopolitical ones. If you want your industry to succeed, you'd better keep those minerals for yourself. So in this regard, I believe that most tension, most conflicts, if you like this word, they may happen in the economic dimension rather than in physical, military one. This might be the main thing that most economists will consider.
Okay, thank you, Vadim. I don't know if you have time, but we have another question too. um,
Sure.
Okay, you have been involved in supporting BRICS energy consultations at COP26 and in multilateral negotiations on the impacts of the implementation of responses measures at COP27. what are the main topics of concern and discussions related to critical minerals at this conference, and how can they influence the global energy and environmental agenda, and especially for our region, if you have any background? Thank you.
Thank you for this question. I've been asking this question myself many times because the fact is that at no COP on climate, like at no UNFCCC COP meetings, you will hear anything about critical minerals. That's very strange. It's very bizarre. But those meetings do not discuss critical minerals. I do realize that the key focus during those meetings is on climate measures and climate mitigation and adaptation things, ranging from finance to concrete emission reduction targets and so on. But in my opinion, and I hope that many of you after this presentation will also support my point of view, is that without critical minerals, we cannot make emission reductions happen. As simple as that. So if we do not think of how we address the challenge of critical minerals in terms of both supply, but also sustainability and ensuring that this supply does not destroy one part of the world to make the other part of the world transition smoothly. So if we do not address those things, we will end up in a broken energy transition, which will happen just to a certain extent, which will be, halfway complete and halfway incomplete. So yeah, at those meetings, critical minerals are not part of the mandate for negotiation. And what is interesting about the International Energy Agency, which I cited quite many times today, is that they are the first multilateral institution which actually set up a specific task force, a specific kind of division to work on critical minerals at the ministerial level. My suggestion in this regard to us as BRICS countries would be to also launch a cooperation track on critical minerals, because it is very important for BRICS countries to harmonize their approaches. For instance, if we talk about global environmental regulations for deep sea mining in the international waters, I think BRICS countries could come up with a joint vision for such environmental regulation. So there is a lot BRICS countries can do together. Also, if we talk about South America or even Mercosur countries, there are many trade tools which can be used to either facilitate the influx of critical minerals that your countries need to ensure this energy transition, and on the other hand, to promote the minerals that you can export more. This can be and should be done, in my view, at this regional level, because there are many challenges that this lithium triangle countries are facing altogether. And then I'm very happy the next presentation is about lithium. But in the BRICS setting, BRICS is part of the global governance system. And the power of BRICS is in its capacity to suggest big visible initiatives globally. So I truly believe that we can also play our role in that and work on concrete solutions to make sure that our energy transition does not end up without sustainable critical mineral supply, both in terms of availability, but also sustainability.
Thank you, Vadim. And I would like to remember all that Argentina is part of the BRIC now, probably.
Probably, yes.
And Bolivia is trying to unite the group. Perhaps it could change. It could change the agenda for our region too. I don't know. We have the last question for you. You have time to respond.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. The coordinator of BRICS Youth Energy Cooperation. Sorry. How do you young professionals from BRICS countries perceive the importance of critical minerals in the context of energy transitions? How are they contributing to the promotion of sustainable solutions in this area?
Sorry, Astrid, you meant how young people or
Yes. How the youth people, sorry, how the young professionals from BRICS countries perceive the importance of critical minerals in this context of the energy transition, and how are they contributing to the promotion of sustainable solutions in this area?
Yeah, I think it's important for us as BRICS Youth Energy Agency and also all partnering organizations to educate young people around us, especially those involved in climate action and energy action, about the importance of critical minerals, about the fact that energy transition itself is very material and energy intensive. Because, sometimes not sometimes, unfortunately, oftentimes we hear that our energy transition is only about good things. So if you participate in the energy transition, you contribute to something better, cleaner, greener. You make this planet a better place. So you can truly make it a better place if you address, again, the whole cycle of your technological process. If you source your minerals without harming the environment, because mining itself is also I wouldn't say a big, but a significant emission sector. So mining those minerals does not happen without emissions either. And then you have this whole processing part, and then you have manufacturing part. And once those clean technologies come to their end of life, you need to kind of throw them away. But how you make sure that you do not, again, pollute the environment? How do you make sure that you dispose of those things, such as wind turbines, such as solar panels, which might also get toxic if they are disposed of in a wrong way? How do you make sure that you do not accumulate huge amounts of waste, quite toxic, and do not add up pressure on the environment just for the sake of 10, 20, or maximum 30 years, but it's quite long, like I would say maximum 15, 20 years of your clean energy production. So we need to speak about that more with young people, so that their climate action and their energy action is based on science and is based on scientific evidence, not on big and beautiful symbolic words about the green and clean transition. We as young people, we need to realize that this transition does not come out of the blue. We need a lot of things from underneath the ground to make it happen. And I would say that now, not many young people, not only in BRICS, just across the world, because I talk to people from different countries and different regions, most of them are not very much aware about the problem. Not because they don't think it's important, because they just don't know. So our role, and I'm very much thankful to the team of the Observatorio de Geopolítica Energética for inviting me to speak about this. We need more of this, more events of this sort. So once we know about the implications of the energy transition, about the challenges of making it happen, we will have more policymakers in the future who are now young people, who will be conscious of not only the benefits of the energy transition, but also of the implications, negative ones, that it might cause.
Yes, Vadim, we are very, very grateful with you and with the BRICS Youth Energy Agency for share your knowledge. So we finished this session, and I asked the public to please continue for the with the colloquium. Today and tomorrow we have an excellent program too. Very, very, thank you very much.
Thank you. Muito obrigado pelo convite.
Obrigada, Vadim.